Good evening, Wright County. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, friends, mentors, presenters, you are in for an eye-opening, educational, at times emotional evening, one you will not forget anytime soon or ever. We're very thankful that you're here. You'll hear from a number of people who know the truth, either from personal experiences or from their professional experiences. You'll learn the telltale signs to look for if you suspect someone you love is abusing drugs, and equipping you with the tools you need to intervene to help your loved one. And there will be time for you to ask questions of professionals in the field. I'm Christine Hewsome, Wright County Commissioner, and I have the honor of introducing the speakers for the first segment of our program. Our first speaker is Sheriff Joe Haggerty. He began his career with Wright County working in the jail and then in communications before going on the road as a patrol deputy. He served as patrol sergeant, where he was tasked with special projects in high crime areas. He was promoted to patrol lieutenant and later appointed chief deputy by Sheriff Gary Miller. He successfully ran for sheriff in 2010 and was reelected in 2014. He is currently in his 29th year with Wright County Sheriff's Office. I have the privilege of serving with the sheriff on Safe Communities of Wright County, MEDA, the Regional Crime Lab, and Safe Schools meeting, and appreciate his energy and can-do attitude. Welcome, Sheriff Joe Haggerty.
Thank you, Commissioner Houston, and thank you for all attending tonight. We're hoping to get about 900 here, and hopefully we can tape it and just keep on running it, because what you're going to learn tonight is something we all need to know, and that, of course, we're very passionate about in Wright County with the Sheriff's Office, County Attorney, our police departments, whatnot, in providing a safe place for us to live, recreate, and work. I'll probably only take a couple minutes of your time here, and we'll get on with the meat and potatoes of the forum. Again, thank you and welcome. We're fortunate in Wright County to have a team approach here in detecting criminal activity, much of which is centered around illegal drug use. Our team includes 3 police departments, Annandale, Buffalo, Howard Lake. All 3 chiefs are here. Our County Attorney's Office, Tom Kelly, Human Services, Court Services, Public Health, our MEDA group, Methamphetamine and Drug Awareness through Wright County, Safe Communities of Wright County, you name it, we're a team, we're all pulling together. And we do enjoy the cooperation of our state and federal partners, including the Drug Enforcement Administration. Special Agent Dan Morin is here with us today, and we certainly appreciate that. For those of you football fans, being it's Super Bowl time here, if some of you know CenturyLink Field in Seattle, it's where the Seattle Seahawks play, an NFL football team. The fans who attend the games are passionately called the 12th man. For you non-football fans, there's 11 people on defense, 11 on offense, and the fans are called the 12th man because they make a difference. That indicates they're an essential component of the Seahawks battle against any opponent. We, as the Sheriff's Office, in our consortium here, we cannot combat this war against our families alone. We need your help in being vigilant, reporting what you see. The people we serve really are the 12th man here in Wright County. Thanks so much for attending tonight's presentation, and I'm confident you're going to leave here with the information you need to keep all of our families safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Next we have Tom Kelly, our Wright County Attorney. Tom has been with the office since 1984. He was Chief of Criminal Division between 1990 and 1998 and has been the elected county attorney since 1999. I have the privilege of serving with Tom on Safe Communities of Wright County, MEDA, the Law Library, Regional Crime Lab, and the Safe Schools meeting. I appreciate his leadership, his guidance, and his wit. Welcome, Attorney Kelly.
For those of you that know me, if you were to give me a microphone and tell me to talk in 5 minutes what I wanted to say, we wouldn't get very far. So I actually written down what I thought I'd want to say. So I think I'll stick to the script. During my 30 years with the County Attorney's Office, nothing has impacted more negatively upon the criminal justice system and society than drugs. Some of the drugs would be marijuana, methamphetamine, opiates, heroin, and synthetic drugs, also known as designer drugs, that mimic other drugs. So now you have K2 and spice, which mimic marijuana, bath salts, which mimic amphetamines, and C24 and C25 and other synthetic acids that mimic LSD. The financial impact to the taxpayer because of the drugs is in the millions. Drugs have increased our caseload, our workload, and our costs. Cases involving CHIPs, children in need of protective services, have increased. Drugs rob your liberty, kidnap your soul, and hold you prisoner. Drugs can also kill you, even on your first use. Wright County last year had 4 people die because of heroin. Every day in the United States, more than 100 people die because of a drug overdose. Considering the devastating impact drugs have on our criminal justice system, society, and families, what can be done? We can't arrest and prosecute and incarcerate our way out of this problem. That will not break the addiction to drugs, nor will it break the criminal behavior cycle. We need a 3-pronged approach to combat criminal behavior involving addictive drugs. We need law enforcement and prosecution for sure, but we need education and long-term treatment. Yes, those 3 prongs are important as we combat this problem. However, what we need most of all is you, the parent. That is why we are so glad that you are here. Trust me, law enforcement and schools are not the first line of defense when it comes to your child. You are the first line of defense. If something is causing you concern, then investigate. Be the parent that you are. As the problem became worse, in February of 2004, Wright County created MEDA, Meth Education and Drug Awareness. Our goal was, and still is, raising awareness and educating youth, families, and citizens on the dangers of drugs. In 2013, MEDA served over 7,000 community members and youth through 6 grants. MEDA is alive and well. Check us out at MEDA.net. I am not a business major, but I believe part of this problem boils down to simple economics. As long as there is a demand, there will be a supply, and the stranglehold upon the criminal justice system, society, and our families will continue. It is our hope that education and treatment will help reduce the demand and therefore the supply. That is why forums like this are so important and necessary. Education and treatment cost society a lot less than incarcerating individuals in prison. Education and treatment not only saves money, but if successful, breaks the drug addiction and thereby the criminal behavior cycle. From a cost-benefit analysis, education and treatment are in the best interest of us all. One of the things I enjoy doing is going to schools throughout Wright County and talking to students about our great country, life in general, the criminal justice system, and a number of other issues, including alcohol and drugs. I have now spoken to over 11,000 students. I talk about mistakes and how we have all made them. I tell them mistakes are building blocks of life. We make a mistake, we learn from it, and we become a better person. I tell them that unfortunately, with some of these drugs, meth, heroin, and synthetics, because they are so highly addictive that using them even once may be the one mistake they can't overcome. When you are willing to sell your own mother for your next high, how much worse can it be? Yes, there is treatment, but that is not always a sure bet. The only sure bet I know is not to use the drugs in the first place. That is why we have to do all we can to stop the first use. That is why forums of this nature are so very important. Let me conclude by saying that the landscape is not all gloom and doom. Just look at tonight. Look at all of you. When we first started META, our slogan was meth kills. Then our slogan was drugs destroy. Now our slogan is making hope happen. You symbolize that hope. Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge and other treatment facilities symbolize that hope. And all of us working together will symbolize that hope. Thank you for coming, and I hope you get something out of tonight.
Ann Warren, Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Minneapolis-St. Paul District Office of the Law Drug Enforcement Administration, began his law enforcement career with the DEA over 25 years ago in Seattle, Washington. After 9 years, he transferred to the country of Guatemala, where he conducted and oversaw international investigations and operations throughout Central and South America for 3 years. He relocated to the Ponce, Puerto Rico office in 2001 as the office head, and led enforcement operations throughout the Caribbean. In 2004, he was assigned to the DEA headquarters Office of Inspections in Washington, D.C. as both an inspector and senior inspector for internal operations until his transfer to the Minneapolis-St. Paul District Office in September of 2007 as the office head. The Minneapolis-St. Paul office oversees all DEA operations in Minnesota and North Dakota. Agent Morin is a graduate of the University of Washington with a Bachelor of Arts in Business Education. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Agent Morin.
First of all, thank you so much. This means a lot to us in law enforcement to see the support from Wright County that we're seeing tonight. And to the chiefs and the sheriffs and the sheriff, thank you so much for allowing me to represent the law enforcement interest in tonight. Now, we have a robust agenda, so I'm going to get right to it. As I go through the presentation this evening, I'm going to ask you to consider three things that are a tremendous threat to our region, to Minnesota, and to Wright County. First and foremost, organized crime. Second, the underworld that we see operating within the internet that is supportive of synthetic drug use, distribution, manufacturing. And the third thing is being able to look right in the face of the prescription drug epidemic that is absolutely eroding our society today. It doesn't take very long to figure out where we have our problems. You look at the chart behind me, I want you to take two of those items and combine them, please. And that's going to be the opiates and it's going to be the heroin. Why do I say that? Because heroin and the opiate pain relievers are one and the same if you're addicted. One and the same. So let's combine those. 24% of those being admitted for treatment today are in because of prescription pain medication or heroin. That is up from less than 9% in 2006. That is 5 times more than cocaine admission, 2.5 times more than methamphetamine admission, 50% more than marijuana admission treatment, second only to alcohol. A sober thought for Wright County. The county attorney just alluded to this. In the last 4 years, 70% of those that died in this county as a result of drug overdose fell to the hands of either heroin or prescription drug abuse. 70%. This is literally killing us. You look at the numbers behind me. This is no joke. Almost 50 people a day are dying in this country. Prescription drug abuse is killing more of our youth, more of our citizens, than all the other drugs literally combined. Scary thing. Here's the other part of this. How did we get here? Why did prescription drugs become such an integral part of our abuse in this system? Perfect storm. First and foremost, direct marketing on TV. Second, and this is no particular order. Second was the fact that in the mid-1990s, we had this pain management model that came out. Nobody wanted to experience pain. And there was some bad information that came out about the addictive qualities of opiate pain medication. Third We have a pill for everything. That has been ingrained in everyone's head sitting here in this auditorium and our kids. We have a pill that will treat anxiety. We have a pill that will treat depression. We have a pill that will treat obesity. We have bled it down into our families that there's a quick fix and that there's a great alternative. Let's illustrate that further. Population of the United States is roughly 4% of the world's entire population. We consume 40 to 60% of all prescription drugs in the world. That is a disproportionate amount. Let's take it further. What drugs are being abused? Across the country, the most widely prescribed, the most widely abused drugs, hydrocodone. Let's take it to Minnesota. In the state of Minnesota, the most widely prescribed, most widely abused drugs, hydrocodone. Oxycontin use. The United States accounts for over 90% of all Oxycontin being abused. That's worldwide. 4% of the population. Hydrocodone. We abuse 80% of the world's manufacturing of hydrocodone. It's pretty scary stuff, right? Where do we get it? Whoops. Where do we get it? Our own medicine cabinets. 55% of those polled, surveyed, said that they started abusing prescription medication for non-medical purposes from their own medicine cabinets. When they ran out of their medicine cabinets at home, they went to their friends and to their families. There's a way to stop that. Prescription drug take-back events. This county is participating in that. Do you think we're being overprescribed when in a 6-month period of time we're taking in almost 4 metric tons in the state of Minnesota each and every 6 months that started in 2010? That is an issue. That stops it, because this is one of the things that we can control, right? Just right in our own counties. Here's some other trends that are pretty alarming. We have practices, medical practices, that probably aren't doing so well. And there's a way that you can turn around a practice that's not doing too well. You can defraud Medicare and Medicaid, which is occurring. You can just flat out sell prescriptions for cash. You can flat out sell items in your inventory. By and large, that is the very minority of medical professionals, right? Our doctors, by and large, overall, do an amazing job. Here's another trend. There's been a 355% increase in theft, loss, and abuse of prescription drugs inside medical clinics. What does that equate to? What it means is that we have first responders that show up that are going to administer something like fentanyl. Imagine you're on the side of the road, you've been in a car accident, you have a broken leg. You want pain relief, right? No one nodded their head. You want pain relief, right? What happens if 50% of that has been removed and been inserted with saline solution? Because that's what's occurring. We have one case, 600 vials had been tampered with, so that the addict, who was a medical professional, could have his fix. And no one would know about it until you were the recipient of that. No, by the way, some of those have led to bacterial meningitis, hepatitis outbreaks, even worse, maybe HIV. If you look at the map that I put up there, this one astonishes even me. I think I've seen just about everything. Someone want to explain to me why someone would travel from Florida to the state of Minnesota to fill their prescription. Why would they pass, I'm not kidding, 12,340 pharmacies between Florida and Minnesota to get it filled? Because we fill it. We don't ask a question. It was cheaper to come up to Florida, or from Florida rather, than to buy it in Florida. Does that not scare the heck out of some of you guys that we have people coming here to get drugs because, quite frankly, they'll get them? So what are we doing about it? We have a skill set that's unparalleled by others, but we're able to take our purview over the medical industry, combine it with our state and local resources, form a task force, and we're going right to the heart of the organizations that are creating this dilemma that we're facing. You can't talk about prescription drugs and not talk about heroin. A recent CDC study concluded 3 out of 4 people abusing prescription drugs will migrate to heroin. Scary prospect, right? So who's manufacturing heroin? The world's largest supplier is Pakistan, Afghanistan. We're not influenced by them. The country that impacts us the most, directly south of us. I talked about organized crime. The Mexican drug cartels, specifically the Sinaloa cartel, represents the new face of organized crime. And I'll get into that in just a little bit. Why? Let me back up. The blue section that you see on the west side of the coast of Mexico, controlled by Sinaloa cartel, the most advantageous region rather in the entire country to manufacture this. This is the root of all evil, literally when it comes to heroin. Based on the plant, they harvest the opium, and they convert it in a really high-tech looking lab, right? Doesn't that look awesome? White coats, hoods, and everything. They convert it from opium to morphine to heroin. Once the heroin is produced, guess what? Let's get it up to the United States. Well, what has this organized crime figure done? They have formed a very toxic relationship with the street gangs. In our region, we have approximately 100,000 documented street gang members. Their drug of choice is heroin. In the city, or in the Twin Cities, let's just talk about that for a second. There are two different factions distributing heroin that are impacting even Wright County. The first is kind of the North Twin Cities area, primarily dominated by Chicago-based gangs that have set up shop here to peddle this poison. Primarily, it's the white, gray texture of heroin being sold in plastic bags, various dollar amounts. Here's the kicker. There's a local area prefix. Someone calls it thinking they're dialing somebody in North Minneapolis. Well, those people that are receiving the phone call, they're not even in the state. More often than not, they're actually sitting in Chicago. That phone has been forwarded to 3 other phones. You have a multitude of people answering the same phone number. It's a 24/7 operation. It's like a pizza delivery service. I kid you not. That is an incredible operation. When you think about it logistically, it poses challenges for law enforcement, but it puts the product in the hands of those who are abusing it. On the south side of the Twin Cities, you have a Mexican-based cartel cell, or cells, plural, operating. Different type of heroin, brown heroin. A little bit less pure, price is about the same, packaged in balloons. Guess what we call their phone number? That's a local area prefix. Guess where you're dialing? Anybody want to guess? I won't pick on anybody because everybody's ducking. Mexico. You heard me correct? Mexico is answering these phones. They're dispatching people to create a delivery service to our youth. Crazy. So what are we doing to combat the heroin issue? First and foremost, forums, like what we're at tonight. Secondly, enforcement operations. We know enforcement operations will not take care of this problem in and of itself, but it's a big step in it. And so in April of 2014, we culminated a number of collaborative investigations involving 22 of the state-funded task forces, which identified the worst of distributors. We took a punch and hit organized crime right in the mouth. It took out 111 principal distributors, some of whom were connected to big organizations. That's a good start. Seize drugs, seize weapons. What is the progress of the future? Continued operations, working with organizations such as Know the Truth and Minnesota Adult Teen Challenge. It's having forums. Is it working? Is it paying off? Yeah, it is. This is fragile. Do not get me wrong. We're not going to pat ourselves on the back just yet. But let me explain this. This is the first decrease that we've seen in heroin-related overdoses since 2011. When the rest of the country continues to see 20, 30% increases in heroin overdose deaths, and we see across the board a 15% decrease, hats off to you. And as the sheriff said, you are the 12th man. We can't get it done without you. I'm going to leave you with this thought when we switch off of heroin and go to methamphetamine. Heroin overdose scenes have to be treated as a crime scene. If you are a family member, a friend, a relative, anyhow touching a victim of heroin overdose, you need to be able to get that phone. You need to see the phone numbers that were most recently dialed, get law enforcement involved because we can step in and make a difference at that point. Methamphetamine. By and large, the drug that we see by volume that's impacting the state, methamphetamine, there is no secondary. Hands down. Organized crime. Guess who runs the methamphetamine labs that predominantly control the production that we see in the state of Minnesota? The Sinaloa cartel. Using slightly more sophisticated methods than the heroin operations, these are huge containers, big vats making thousands of pounds of methamphetamine at a time, all chemically based, not reliant on any type of plant product. Social media. Some of the trends that we're seeing, Facebook, Twitter, distribution of methamphetamine. If you look at the key points there, something should stand out at you. Increased volumes that we're seeing coming into the state, decrease in price. Let me illustrate that. 2 years ago, not even that, 18 months ago, 1 pound package, methamphetamine sold for $20,000 wholesale. That same 1 pound package today is $9,000. Why? It's a great marketing scheme. Let's get more methamphetamine out into the community. Let's get it cheaper. Let's get more people addicted. Let's get it more commonplace. And as soon as we build up a bigger clientele base, we're going to raise the price and make more money. They make more money selling and distributing methamphetamine than they do cocaine. Anybody recognize this cat? Do we have methamphetamine labs here in the state? Absolutely we do. We see less and less. It's not like the mid-90s where we have a bunch. We have enough to raise concern. They can look anything like, that's a little bit washed out, a little vial kind of in the background behind one of the beer bottles was a 250 milliliter to make ounce quantities of methamphetamine, all the way to a one-pot method. Now, this one's a scary one. I'm going to go ahead and show you a video. 3 months ago, in Dakota County, 2 kids were driving around in a car. They decided to make methamphetamine using this method. Watch what the bottle happens when they tip it over. Now, that happened inside the confines of a car, a cab of a car. 2 children, well, I say children, teenagers. When asked why, and by the way, they both survived, both in intensive care for extensive burns to their body. Why were you doing this in a car? Because our parents came home early, we couldn't use the garage. Right? They were going to plan on doing this in the garage, could have set the whole house on fire, in addition to hurting themselves. The same strategy that we're using now for heroin, we're using for methamphetamine. Combining the efforts of everyone, sharing actionable intelligence information, sharing it across the board, connecting the dots, that's how we attack the methamphetamine strategy. Do you have cartel presence in the state of Minnesota? You do. Are they connected directly to main leaders? By the way, the Forbes World's Richest Man, Chapo Guzman, arrested based on cases that occurred in the states, to include Minnesota, that were directly tied to he and his organization. I talked about the internet. This is a scourge. I want you all to walk out of here tonight remembering a couple things. Synthetic drugs are deadly. Synthetic drugs are ever-changing. Synthetic drugs are being distributed through the internet. It's a mouse click away. You no longer have to go to a street corner with cash and buy this stuff. As it was alluded to, synthetic cannabinoids, bath salts, you cover the whole scheme. The part I want you to take away, though, too, on this, as you read the slide, the very bottom, ER physicians know how to treat heroin overdoses. They know how to treat cocaine and methamphetamine overdoses. When somebody walks in, they can't explain what they consumed, how's the doctor supposed to help you? Think about that. You can see identical packages and you will have dissimilar products in identically packaged products. You have no idea what you're getting. It is so rapidly changing. You have chemists that recently took 2CI, which is an abused drug, and made something called 25I. Anybody heard of this? N-bomb. 4 deaths related in Minnesota to this. 2CI wasn't good enough because it had a slow onset. So some chemist out in China decided to add 1 molecule, make it 25I, make it stronger, make it cheaper, make it more effective, and have it quickly react to your body instead of having a 5-minute delay. That's what's causing deaths. That's the type of stuff we're getting in this area. MDMA, rebranded as Molly, never left. For those that were having fun in the 80s and 90s, this is the rave drug that you often saw. It's been nothing but repackaged. Does it have an effect? And do people sometimes get into the gray area and decide, is it legal or is it illegal? I'm here to tell you that Jim Carlson, the owner of the largest distribution center in the region, has 17 and a half years to decide if it was a legal or illegal product, because the jury thought it was illegal and so did the judge. That's a big hit. 98%, let me take that back, emergency room visits in Duluth decreased by 98% the day that place closed down. 98%. Your kids have access to things we did not have access to. Instagram, secure chat, Snapchat. These are the types of things that scare me as a parent, because there's also something called the Tor, the onion router, which is a secure line to be able to get to dark websites with anonymity and start ordering things online that you should never be able to order. Through places like Silk Road, Evolution, you can buy guns, you can buy silencers, you can buy drugs, you can buy sex, you can buy just about anything on these. And guess what? They don't want currency. They want bitcoins. Who knows what a bitcoin is? It's a virtual amount of currency that resides in the cloud, I kid you not, that you have in an electronic wallet. That's exchanged between foreign countries and us because they don't want to be, well, let me take a step back. If you don't know where to get bitcoins, you can research it on the web, and they will actually say, plug in your zip code, and we'll point you to a guy that will meet up with you on a corner and sell you bitcoins. Bitcoins range, they're about $390 some odd dollars. They fluctuate with the valuation. But it's a lot easier to move bitcoins than it is that. That represents $208 million, one of the larger seizures that was a methamphetamine lab down in Mexico. Other trending drugs. In Wright County, we have noticed that there's been a little bit of an uptick in the abuse of something called promethazine with codeine. It is a prescription cough syrup. It's being chugged, it's being swigged, it's being mixed with pop. Right under our noses. You'd walk by someone, you wouldn't even know what they're drinking. The scary thing about this is promethazine with codeine slows down respiration so much that they won't even prescribe it to someone under the age of 16. That's what's causing death because the heart rate and the breathing slows down so much they just expire. Butane honey oil, a derivative of the marijuana plant, because marijuana plant by itself wasn't good enough, so somebody had to synthesize a way to get stronger psychoactive effects in the THC content, put it in an oil form. If you see up on top, if you ever see a code, this code 710 simply means oil. If you turned it upside down like you did on your calculator to spell hello, it spells oil. So if you see some type of a Snapchat with that configuration, that's what they're referring to. The way that they extract it is using butane. Butane is highly flammable. If a spark through any type of static electricity can set it off. That house blew up, converting marijuana to this butane honey oil in Southern California. You make a difference. Don't think that you don't. Every single forum that we participate in, every word of mouth that you take a message and you send to somebody else, you're making a difference. I thank you so much for being here. I have the pleasure to introduce a young woman, Miranda, who's going to come up with the Minnesota Adult Teen Challenge and share her story. Thank you so much. I'm going to be here at question and answer, and I'll be afterwards. Thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miranda, and thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight and giving me this opportunity to share my story and get a little bit of insight from a former drug addict herself. So I'm just going to start with my first drug use, and that was when I was 12 years old, 7th grade, out on my dad's farm, and my cousin came out. She brought some alcohol with, and out of curiosity, out of boredom, I wanted to try drinking. I'd seen family members drink growing up. It looked fun, and I seen that it did that for them, so I wanted to try it. And what happened there was, none of my friends really wanted to do it, but I realized that my older siblings, they went out and partied. I looked up to them. I looked up to my big brother, to my big sister, and when I went to my first house party, I thought that that was my in. I started meeting everyone, and I started being looked down as their little sister. Going into high school, I found my identity in the party crowd because of the people I chose to surround myself with and the attitude that I had. I knew that I looked innocent, so I knew that it was really easy to get away with a lot of things. With divorced parents, when dad says no and mom says yes, well, I'm going to my mom's house to do what I want. And if mom says no and dad says yes, I'm going to my dad's house to do what I want. And shortly after trying alcohol, I tried marijuana for the first time, and I was kind of waiting for something bad to happen. Everyone told me to just say no, don't do drugs. And there I was, sitting with my friends. I went home that night, ate a cheese quesadilla, and went to bed. And I was like, all right, I feel like I'm kind of lied to. Marijuana doesn't even seem like it's that bad. I heard that marijuana was a mild hallucinogen, and I heard that if I built up my tolerance with that, I was able to handle other drugs. And I tried acid, and I liked what it did for me. And I found out that mushrooms were a hallucinogen too, so I tried that. And really from there, my experimenting went off the charts. I always had an excuse for my use, whether it was my birthday, your birthday, school dance, a football game. And what came with all this partying was lying, of course, because I didn't want to get caught by my parents. I didn't want to get in trouble. So it really started with a lot of innocent lies. I'm going to a sleepover. I'm going to a dance. And the next day when I'd come home and I'd looked a little suspicious, a little hungover, my mom would be like, well, where were you last night? And I'd be like, at a friend's house. Well, well, who are the parents? And I'd just make up some names. I would make up addresses, and they'd go to the wrong place. There'd be times where I'd just shut off my cell phone for the rest of the night, turn it back on again, and I'd see that I'd have like 20 voicemails from my parents. It came to the point where I started getting in a lot of trouble with the law, and I was put on probation for truancy, and I really became very defiant. I started getting a lot of tickets. I was getting arrested, handcuffed, shackled, tackled, tased, in and out of group homes, and I really didn't see any end for it. I was just extremely sneaky behind my parents' back. My mom would put clear tape on the door, and that's how she would find out when I was sneaking out at night, and she really put it all to a stop when she got a hold of my probation officer and told her that I think that Miranda is going to overdose and die, or she's going to run away and never come back. And I was court-ordered to treatment, and I got the chance to turn my life around, but it was not easy. It was definitely not easy getting sober at a young age. Seeing all the kids around me drinking and partying and stuff, leaving inpatient and going back out into reality where I'm the only person that changed. The world is exactly the same. All my friends are still partying. I was still way behind in school that I had to catch up on, and it was extremely difficult. But you guys can totally feel free to ask me any questions about my story, any sort of advice that you guys might want to ask for me. Totally feel free to do that once the Q&A panel comes on. But I'd like to tell you guys that I'm 2.5 years sober. I'm in my 2nd year of college, and I got a lot of awesome opportunities in my life now. Thank you. And I would just like to introduce my boss, Adam Peterson. He's the program director of this wonderful program that we have, Know the Truth, and here he is.
Good evening. So my name is Adam Peterson, and I have the privilege of working at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. As we get the slides up here, I'm just going to draw your attention to your folder here. You've got a lot of really good information in here. We'll talk about a little bit at the end. You've got a survey on a colored sheet of paper that we really look forward to hearing about the impact that this presentation had. We've got some information. The one thing I do want to draw your attention to is this little piece of paper here. As Dan so eloquently said, this is absolutely a preventable issue here. And it can start with you tonight going home, looking in your medicine cabinets and seeing what you have and disposing of it correctly. Here on this little white piece of paper, you've got the addresses to each place in Wright County that will take your unneeded, unused medication. There's some directions on there, what they take and what they don't take. And so again, we're going to really encourage you to take that step. Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge is a drug and alcohol treatment and recovery program. They have short-term and long-term programs, inpatient and outpatient for teens and adults. We've had 12-year-olds in our program before. We've had 76-year-olds. We know addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter how old you are, what color your skin is, what city you live in, what kind of job you have, how much money you make. Addiction can really happen to anybody. We have a licensed Rule 31 program, anywhere from 7 to 90 days, depending on client need. And then we have a long-term program, 12 to 15 months. We actually have an aspect of that program where people that are looking at prison time or jail time can be court-ordered to treatment to really try to change their life around. We absolutely can't do it alone. As you heard, the county attorney and the sheriff said, we all need to work together. In 2006, Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge saw a need to try to prevent addiction before it started. And so they started this program that is called Truth, goes into high schools and middle schools, talks to students about the risks of using and abusing drugs and alcohol. We bring a peer-to-peer format. So Miranda is one of our speakers that goes in and shares her story with the students and really talk about the dangers of drugs and alcohol. We survey the students. We're going to be able to share some of that information. We are very active in your community. Our program is offered completely free of charge to high schools, middle schools, community organizations. We really are just trying to do whatever we can to prevent future stories of addiction. So, my next slide. We're very excited to be coming out to your community. Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge purchased a camp on Lake Charlotte. Last year, we're starting a teen boys academy called Lakeside Academy that will be here in Buffalo starting around this springtime. And so we're very excited about that to come to the community. So you've heard a lot about the drug trends, and so I don't want to spend much time on this other than just to kind of share a little bit of the way that we communicate with the students about this stuff. We really focus on trying to correct misconceptions. So when we talk about alcohol abuse and the misconception with alcohol abuse that everybody's doing it, we really share with the students that that's not the case. You might think that because in the halls, after prom, after homecoming, after basketball games, kids are talking about how drunk they got, right? Kids don't exactly come into school bragging about how sober they got over the weekend, right? And so perspective is everything. Over 50% of kids in high school will never drink in high school. So not everyone's doing it. When we talk about gateway drugs, we talk about how they lead from one thing to the other. Definitely the chemical transfer of these drugs where you build up a tolerance and you want more, how that happens. And then the other thing is situational. You think there's only alcohol at the party, chances are there's something else. And you might have no problem saying no to a drug like ecstasy or meth or heroin, especially when you're sober. But when you're under the influence, it's a different story. And when it's a prescription pill that's from the doctor, it's safe. And again, I echo what Dan said. In no way are we discounting the medical field. When medicine is taken under the care of a doctor and under the prescribed amount, it does amazing things. But what you might not know is if you don't have a prescription for it, it's illegal for you to have it. A lot of these prescription pills are Schedule II, Schedule III drugs. Where Adderall, you have one pill on your possession without a prescription, that's a felony drug charge. And Adderall is a drug that is used to help study because it keeps you awake. Adderall, the chemical makeup, is an amphetamine salt. It's right in that category. These things are so similar to some of these harder drugs. So we want to talk a little bit about what's happening in Wright County and the schools that we work in. And so here's some numbers in regards to the work we've done in the high schools here in Wright County. So 21% of students surveyed have abused illegal drugs. That's lower than across the state. It's right around 26, 28%. Of users, I want to be very clear on this second statistic, 96% of your high school students aren't smoking marijuana, okay? It is 96% of those 21%. So marijuana is obviously the primary drug of abuse here. And as you heard from Dan, the ways that marijuana is being used, the way it's being manufactured is extremely concerning. Prescription pills, 28%, 22% the ecstasy hallucinogens, 15% synthetics, and 2% of methamphetamine. In regards to drinking, we're right on average pretty much. It's right around 50% is the state average, so a little bit lower. But again, the binge drinking numbers are something that concerns us, and this is something we see normal, the higher female binge drinking numbers to the male binge drinking. Here is just, and we went a little over on the slide here, but this is just of the high schools we speak in, Buffalo, Dassel, Cokato, Rockford, St. Michael, Albertville. These are the numbers in regards to drug use, so you can kind of see how they go from one school to the next. And here's in the middle schools. As a program, we go to middle schools and high schools. We start at 6th grade just because of some of the message and content and the drugs and alcohol that we talk about. And so we really believe in starting there. There have been programs that have reached out to elementary students and things along those lines. But we really want to start in 6th grade because that's what prevention's about, is you want to get to them before they've made up their mind, before they've experimented. We want to prevent that first use. And so those are some of the middle school numbers. Now, a lot of heavy stuff so far we've heard about, but we really want to share some positive as well. And so a little bit of positive here. This is one of my most favorite parts, especially when I'm looking out at all of you, is the reasons why high schoolers and middle schoolers in Wright County don't want to use drugs and alcohol. One, they don't want to run into this guy. sheriff. I think he's nice. I think he's very nice. But they don't want the legal consequences. And then second, they care what you think. Regardless of how many times they tell you they hate you, they don't want you to be their parent, they're so mad you're ruining their life, whatever they say, they care what you think. These are two really important things when we look at how can we help them. It's tough. I'm sure it was very difficult for Miranda's mother to make that call, to call probation on her daughter. But to get away from that enabling and to take that step and take a stand and really get her the help she needed probably saved her life. And so we want to share ways that we can do that with you tonight. I'm going to invite our next speaker up, Corey. This is an individual who's actually currently in the program, a Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. He volunteers for the Know the Truth program, goes out and shares his story in the schools. His story is all too common in the state of Minnesota, the transfer from prescription pills to a harder drug. He's going to share a little bit with you. Let's please welcome Corey.
You also excuse me if I'm not going to so, my story starts off in Stillwater. I was born and raised in a very wealthy home, but very dysfunctional on the inside. Both parents were alcoholics. Dad was very physically and verbally abusive to me, my siblings, and my mom. Around fourth grade, my mom just couldn't take it anymore. She ended up divorcing my dad, and he moved to Hudson, Wisconsin. He wasn't really around much after that, so felt really rejected and abandoned after that. Middle school rolled around, started using marijuana, just found my identity in feeling comfortable because I felt unloved from my dad. Come high school, I started using prescription pills. My mom had Xanax and oxycodone in her medicine cabinet, so I started stealing that from her. Started using cocaine, ecstasy, alcohol, and it progressed to be more of a job for me. I started stealing from her, stealing from other family members, stealing from my hockey teammates. I was just miserable. My mom ended up finding out that I was using all these drugs, and she sent me to 3 treatments before I graduated high school. And as much as she wanted to help me, as much as she wanted me to get better, I wasn't going to accept the help unless I wanted it myself. And I really just wasn't having it. I was young, I was still hurting, so I just kind of brushed it off. I graduated high school and ended up finding heroin for the first time. And I was just so miserable at that point. I finally hit my new rock bottom. And I was sitting homeless at my buddy's house in his garage, high on heroin, and I just said, what is going on with my life? So I ended up calling my mom. I was 18, 19 at the time. And I asked her to help me one more time. She said she would. So I got into treatment. I was sober for about a year and a half. And then one day on October 8th, 2010, my dad called me and said he was having a heart attack. So I hopped in the car, 4 in the morning. I drive over to Hudson, Wisconsin, and find him in his bed, just gasping for air. And I couldn't get him to the car, so we had to call the ambulance. My dad ended up dying from alcoholism 2 days later, and that just wrecked me. As much as I was so hurt for my dad, and as much as he hurt me and my family, I still loved him. And watching him die just ruined me. So I started getting high again. Fast forward about a couple years. 8 months ago, I was pulled over and arrested by some wonderful cops in Washington County, and had some things in my car that I shouldn't have had, and was charged with 3 felonies, but they graciously gave me the opportunity to go to Teen Challenge. And since being in Teen Challenge, I've been able to work on those core issues of why I am the way I am, that rooted rejection, the abandonment, and it's a blessing in itself. I can't be happier than I am right now. I have about 4 months left in the program. So I appreciate all you guys' support, and thank you for listening.
So things to look for. As you heard in Miranda and Corey's story, some of the warning signs, some of the behavior changes. Two big things. Family history of addiction. Now, we're not saying if your grandfather was an addict, you're guaranteed to be an addict, but we know the environment someone grows up in is directly correlated to the choices they make. If someone grows up seeing their parents drink every single night, it's okay. It's fine. It doesn't matter if they say it's not. This is what they're doing, and so this is what I see. So that behavior plays a huge role. Also, we cannot have this conversation without talking about trauma, neglect, abuse, things like that. There's a big correlation between mental health and addiction. Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, we're co-occurring, we do dual diagnosis, and so a lot of times when we talk to individuals in the medical field or mental health field, it's the chicken and the egg. Which came first? Was it a mental health issue that led to self-medication, or was it abuse, drug and alcohol abuse, that led to a mental health issue? And so, abuse, trauma, we're not just talking about someone getting sexually molested or raped. Those are definitely big ones that can lead to that, but other things as well, like the divorce. That can cause trauma. That can cause just, I don't know, which side do I go on, right? If things aren't clearly explained, a lot of times we've heard young people share, I felt like it was my fault that my parents got divorced. And so working through those situations, increased borrowing of money. We've encouraged parents before to ask for a receipt. To my knowledge, drug dealers don't use receipts, right? And if they keep on asking for $20 every Friday night to go bowling, and then you take them bowling and they're like throwing a 40 or throwing a 60, like chances are they've been doing something else with that money, right? And so a paper trail as well. There's credit cards, there's systems online that you can use to track someone's expenses, increased secrecy, changes in conversation, talking in code, hanging out with Molly. That was a big thing for a while. There were some songs out. This is what kids were talking about. Molly's not a girl, Molly is a drug, as you heard Dan share. Eye drops. Going to kind of go through this kind of quick. We want to get to the next story. Some reasons for first use. Experimentation. Also, instant gratification, boredom. We're going to show a couple percentages in a little bit that show the main reason why, the top reasons why kids abuse prescription pills. They're there. That's the number one. They're there. They're easy to get. It's available. Well, we can control that. We can prevent that. We can make it not available, right? And so other reasons, covering up, self-medication, concentration, lack of confidence. These prescription pills have really changed the face of an addict as well. We see it a lot in A honor roll. They're using Adderall to stay up to pass their tests. Oxycontin, Percocet, the painkillers. Athletes are using it to play through the injury so they can get back on the court and impress the scouts. And so we got to pay closer attention. Now at this time, I would like to call Janet up. I'm so excited for this part. This is one of my favorite parts. Janet is so brave and so willing to come forward. We did a couple forums during the summer in Sherburne County, and she shared her story and her son's story. She's going to share a little bit tonight and will be available on the panel. Let's please welcome Janet as she comes forward.
My name is Janet, and I'm from Elk River. I have 3 children, 3 boys. I've been married for many years, 28. My story is about my son, Bobby. He's the youngest of my 3. He grew up in a pretty average family. He was in sports. He was really good at it. Everybody liked him. He was real popular. He was smart. There's just you know, when you think of some kids, you know, you kind of have a certain way of looking at them. You think that they come from a certain type of family or gender or whatever. You know, drugs does not discriminate. You know, it happens to anybody. I'm a nurse. You know, if anybody, I thought that I would see that. But, you know, it started out where Bobby was, he started smoking in 6th grade, was caught, no big deal, you know, didn't think anything of it. And then kind of went from there. He started, you know, with pot, marijuana, you know, and then as the years went on, as I found out, he was into mushrooms and other drugs, you know, just many different things. He was court ordered to go to treatment when he was in high school, so he did that. I can't even remember, there's been so many, if it was 1, 2, 3 times, I don't know. Always came back out, you know, happy and, you know, like everything was fine, but then he'd go right back to it. He did grow up in a house where, you know, we didn't think anything of, you know, having, you know, a beer or a glass of wine here and there. You don't think about that when you're raising kids, you know. We weren't, you know, alcoholics by any means, but you don't think about it, and thinking back, it's like, well, you know, did that start something? I don't know. Another thing that, as a parent, we think about is, you know, we had a cabin. You know, we'd go up north a lot. And then as the kids got older, they didn't want to go. They wanted to stay home and, you know, spend time with their friends on the weekends, or they had jobs that they had to stay home for. So then we think, well, you know, did we leave them home too much? You know, were they unsupervised too much? I was a very trusting mom, naive in that fact as well. You know, I always believed everything that my kids told me. You know, you like to, right? So whenever I questioned anything, Bobby always had an answer, and it was like, okay, all right, you know, no big deal. One thing, too, that I think back to is, you know, Bobby's dad and I, we've had some issues over the years, and I think, well, you know, maybe the fighting, the disagreeing might have had something to do with it. And then when I, you know, hear about Corey's story, you know, it does kind of tell me that, you know, yeah, the verbal, emotional abuse is out there, and unfortunately my 3 sons have had a lot of that from their dad, and I have too. And unfortunately, the marriage has now ended. But, you know, there's also that other thought too. You know, some people say, you know, is it a genetic thing? Yes? No? I believe it is. You know, there's a lot of abuse on my husband's side, you know, that goes back, you know, a couple generations. You know, there's been alcohol and drugs, and I don't use it as an excuse, but I just think, well, you know, maybe it's just something that kind of goes down through the generations. Again, saying how I have been naive, there were things that I saw, and I chose to just think, nah, it's okay. There's nothing going on. I denied everything. You know, I used to see spoons in Bobby's bedroom, you know, and matches. Well, I knew he smoked cigarettes, so I thought, well, he probably had cereal in his room. You know, he's got the lighter because he smoked cigarettes, you know. And then I saw the rolls from the toilet paper. I found out later, you know, that was to block the smell, you know, from pot and, I don't know, maybe even from heroin, I don't know. But, you know, just things like that, you know. If you have a gut feeling, parents, if there's something, don't just pass it off. Don't be like me. You know, I just let too many things go and didn't question it, and I wish I would have. You know, he asked us for money a lot, and we knew something was going on, but we just didn't want to admit that something bad was going on, so we'd give him money here and there in small amounts, $10, $20, and yeah, he'd ask every weekend, and we did ask for receipts, He'd say, yeah, I'll get you a receipt, no problem. Never produced it, you know. Then you say, well, then you can't have anything the next time. So then you skip a couple weekends, don't give him anything, find out that he, you know, borrowed from maybe one of his brothers. Eventually, you know, it got to where, you know, he was getting in trouble with the law. He was an adult, and he was court ordered again to go into treatment. You know, he'd been to treatment so many times, I just can't even keep track of when and how many times he had gone, but, you know, he'd always come out being very positive. You know, he had a good attitude because he was clean, you know, but most of these treatment centers, they're only maybe a 3-week time. And from what I've learned, going myself to the family week, 3 weeks is the minimum amount of time that your brain can handle. And then as soon as you get out, that's the first thing you want again. And that's the first thing Bobby did. He'd always go out and he'd get high again. He'd get heroin. And one of the last treatment centers that he was at, they did not medicate for withdrawals. All the others he had been to, they did, so he had a little easier time, but the last one, they didn't. And he called me, and he kept calling me. He'd only been there like, I think, 3 or 4 days. And he was calling me several times, Mom, come and get me, come and get me. I said, no, Bobby, I'm not going to. You need to stay there. You need to do this. You know, if you don't, you're going to jail for a year. And he couldn't handle it. He checked himself out against medical advice. And in the middle of the night, he called asking me to pick him up. He was at the Walmart in Buffalo. And I said, no, Bobby, go back. And I wouldn't go and get him. And eventually he found friends to come and pick him up. They brought him home. He got home about 6 a.m., went to bed for the night, well, for the morning, I guess, for the rest of us. And then he got up later that day, and he just started getting on the phone, talking to people, and pacing all day into the evening. He was being really just not himself. And he walked down the driveway. We had a long driveway at the time. Saw his dad down there, halfway down the driveway. Told him he loved him. Said goodbye. And later on, my husband came in the door and said, "That was really weird." And unfortunately, Bobby's ride didn't turn out, so he came back in the house, and we started having a talk with him, saying, "You're okay. You can get through this. It's not a problem. You'll get through this." And he just kept saying, "No, I can't. It's just not working. I can't do this. I can't handle it." Well, eventually he was pacing and doing all kinds of things, and finally did leave in a rush a little while later. And I just didn't feel right about it. It just didn't seem, I don't know, something wasn't right. Then as I was looking around, I noticed that he stole his brother's PlayStation or Xbox or whatever it was. And I had to make the call. I had to call the police on my son, which wasn't the first time. I'd called the police on him before, but this time I knew it was going to be different. And they were looking for him, couldn't find him. Went to bed just thinking, okay, all right, well, he probably just went out and, wanted to get that good high. Next morning I was getting ready, doing my own thing. I was on my way to go and pick up his bag from treatment. I wasn't out of Elk River yet, and I got a phone call from a friend of his. And I had the caller ID. I picked it up while I was in the car, and I just answered. I said, "No." And that was the call that we all dread. He said, "Something's wrong with Bobby." And I said, "Where is he?" He said, "He's at my house." I just hung up. I said, "I'll be right there," and I hung up. Bobby committed suicide with a lethal overdose of heroin because he couldn't stand it anymore. He said that he would never go back to jail. He said it was either that or death, and he was not going to jail. So that's what he did. So my message for all of you parents, if something doesn't seem right, question it. Don't just ignore it. Don't be naive, because we don't need any more of this kind of stuff happening. Our kids are too important, and we love them. And I would hate to see this happen to any of my personal friends or anybody, but I know it's happening all over, so just question your kids and call the cops if you have to. They're our friends.
This is statistical note. Get on my next question and get the questions here in just a moment. But this is that 12 reasons why, or 12 reasons teens use prescription drugs, and that top one there, 62%, easy to get from parents' medicine cabinets. We can put an end to that. We can absolutely put an end to that. So I want to share a couple ways that things you can do. Then we're going to call the panel up for question and answer time. Educate yourself right here, starting here. This is great. It's so great to see all of you here taking a stand against this. Educating yourself and educating them is so important. Locking up medication. If you're not going to lock it up, move it out of the bathroom. Move it out of a room where they can shut the door and have their way with it. Put it in the kitchen. Put it in someplace that's high traffic area. Here's the thing. A lot of parents say, well, it's not my kid. It's not my kid. And maybe it's not. But maybe it's your kid's friends. Over 70% of the prescription medications abused are taken from family or friends. And so I know none of you want to contribute to someone else's addiction. And so it's better safe to lock it up or get it out. If you were given medication, as Dan talked about, we're an overly medicated society. For you to have your teeth pulled, you get 30 pills of Vicodin. You might use 2 of those. What happens to those 28? Also, prescription medication, you might not know, has an expiration date. Some of these drugs have time-release capsules in them. Well, after they're expired, that might not work. So a drug that was meant to hit you over an 8-hour period of time hits you all at once, or not at all. And so it's important to be aware of this stuff. Talk early and talk often. We got to get rid of the checklist mentality. This is not a one-time conversation we have with our kids, like the drug talk, the sex talk, the curfew talk, the friends talk. Check it off the list, and we never talk about it again. We need to have this conversation on a regular basis, because it doesn't matter how many PowerPoint slides you have or how incredible of a public speaker you are. That conversation you have with your child when they're in 7th grade and then they're in 10th grade, at homecoming, and that cute guy comes up to them or that girl comes up to them and asks them if they want to drink or do drugs, they're probably not going to remember that conversation, right? But if you have that conversation on a regular basis, you use current events, things in the news to really spark that conversation, they'll remember and they'll feel comfortable coming to you and talking about it. Getting to know your child friends, like Miranda talked about, lying about whose house she was at. It's so important to partner with other parents. And I know, like, getting to know your child, this seems ridiculous. Of course you know your child, but there are things that you can do to get to know them a little bit more, or pay closer attention to who's coming and who's going, and who their friends are and who they're hanging out with. Also, an important thing too is when having a conversation with them, if you're getting the same answer every time, how was your day? Fine. How was your day? Fine. Break routine. If you're getting the same answer, change the question. Ask something different. Probe a little bit deeper. Because if they're given the same response, they're in routine, they're not really thinking about it, and they might be covering up something that's going on in their life. Partnering with other parents, monitoring and guiding, these are so important. You have to have a base level of information to know if there's a change.
Our wonderful panel here to take your questions, and going down the line, we have Miranda Schwartz, we have Corey, we have Adam Peterson, we have Janet Werschela, parent. We have Special Agent Dan Morin. We have County Attorney Tom Kelly, Sheriff Joe Haggerty, Sergeant Matt Treichler, Assistant County Attorney Brian Lutz. We have Chief, Buffalo Police Chief, Pat Budke. We have Annandale Police Chief, Jeff Herr. And we have Howard Lake Police Chief, Dave Thompson. So, thank you. All right, we have some microphones out in the audience.
We're starting to see more states legalize marijuana, and we're starting to hear kind of a growing chorus of it's harmless. So how would any of you respond to the argument that it's just marijuana?
I'll just tell you briefly, you know that one car commercial, it's not your grandfather's Oldsmobile? Back in the late 60s, early 70s, THC, which is the ingredient that makes you high from marijuana, might have been 2 or 3%. And now with some hydroponic grow operations where it doesn't even touch dirt, you can have the THC as high as 27, 28%. So you guys do the math and ask you if what, you older people may have thought of as marijuana is not the marijuana of today. People are going into emergency rooms because of it. So I think we can't just try to equate it back to what it might have been in the late 60s.
Thank you. Another question.
Hi, my name is, sorry. I'm good? All right. Hi, my name is Josh Helberg. I have a family of 3 with a child on the way. I live in Becker. I'm a business owner, a husband, and a father. I feel this is a great place to be able to have a forum on drug abuse prevention and how it affects our communities. The times are changing. Minnesota needs to have schools, communities, and law enforcement work together and be very creative on drug abuse prevention. We need to combat dangerous drugs like prescription drugs, meth, and heroin. As for marijuana, I believe to take the path that Colorado has and other states have taken in legalizing medical marijuana. Medical marijuana is becoming legal in Minnesota, and it's something where we have to deal with that. Parents, neighbors, cops, everybody can benefit from marijuana. We have to educate our children how to safely use the knowledge that we put in front of them. The state of Colorado has taken in over $200 million in tax revenue from medical marijuana last year. A lot of that money could be used to fund new programs, new ways to go after the hard drugs that are killing our children. It's money that could be used to educate the youth in our local communities. Colorado has also seen extensive economic growth coming with the legalization and the taxing of medical marijuana. We need parents, communities, and law enforcement to have open discussions about the changing times that are taking place in our state and our youth and know the correct uses for medical marijuana. My question is, have you guys been talking together to come up with a plan to go into our schools to inform them of marijuana? And with the rescheduling of marijuana, it should be, because there isn't hardly any deaths from it. Colorado has had issues with their edibles, with over-consuming, but nobody that I have heard or seen on record has been killed from marijuana. So, thank you.
I know there was a question in there somewhere. Actually, Wright County is one of 2 counties. The other is down in Cottage Grove, and I don't know if that's Dakota County or Washington County. There's 2 medical marijuana facilities in the state of Minnesota, one of them right here in Wright County, up in the city of Otsego. The Minnesota Sheriff's Association that we're part of here, all 87 counties, have taken the position on medical marijuana as to defer to the medical profession. One thing we did lobby for was to keep it out of the smoking form, and this is all very preliminary. It's oil or it's pill form, and then there will be several dispensaries pharmacies, if you will, throughout Minnesota. I think southwest Minnesota may not have one. So when we met with the Minnesota Department of Health, which regulates it, we met with the city of Otsego, and we met with Dr. Kyle Kingsley, who is one of the two doctors that was successful with their $20,000 application fee, not non-refundable, so only serious people needed to apply, of course. And our concern really was like any other business, the security of it. They assured us it'd be secure, fenced, cameras, 24/7 security, and then they'll handle any internal theft problem that they had. So our concerns with that were relieved to some extent. So again, we deferred to the medical professionals, and I think if you have a child that's having seizures, I get that. I've got a heart. I'm a cop with a heart, believe it or not. And you'd probably do whatever you could for your child to alleviate pain. I get that. The recreational use marijuana, I'll tell you, I'm not a fan of that. We've lobbied against that year in and year out. One reason in my position, and I worked nights for 20 years, and drugs was kind of the deal that I did, because it was pretty much any burglar we arrested, any home we went into where we had crime occurring, violent crime. Usually it was almost like a hand in a glove. There was always a pot pipe with it. So it seemed to be a common denominator in a lot of crime. Now, alcohol as well. I get that. But I appreciate your comment. Right now, I think a lot of our youth are probably a little confused. Is marijuana bad? Is marijuana good? You've got the state, you've got the doctors, some saying, hey, medically there is a use for it. You have another contingent every year. You see it at the state fair, you know, allow marijuana. They have a booth there every year for as long as I've been going to the state fair. And every year there's legislation introduced. Law enforcement, I believe the Chiefs Association's the same way. We're still opposed to it. Whether or not it'll happen, I think there's at least those two states right now, Washington and Colorado. And we talk to those authorities as well. There'll still be a black market for it, because whatever they're selling it for in Colorado, there's still somebody underselling. And then, of course, the laws are kind of confusing. You can't take it out of the state. You can only have so much amount to it. So we're definitely paying attention to it and kind of looking how it plays out. But we also have safe schools in Wright County. Every school district, including Rogers, which is in Hennepin County, because a lot of our kids from St. Michael, Buffalo Township, Otsego, Albertville, Hanover, they might go to Rogers, so we're over there. And we talk a lot about marijuana, we talk about bullying, we talk about everything. So we do work together looking at those things, and we're always open to listening and trying to find the best path. Sergeant Treichler works with our narcotic unit in Wright County, very active. We could probably have 100 people in that unit if we want. Unfortunately, he only has 3 to work with, but he may have some information on the marijuana use that we see.
Thank you. I know we could probably have a whole nother discussion and a whole nother presentation on just marijuana legalization alone. You know, every warrant that we do, and we do around 50 to 60 per year, I mean, we encounter marijuana use. I don't want to say that that's a gateway drug. I'm not going to go down that path, but you know, it's very prevalent. My only issue, like with Colorado, I mean, they're being sued by their 2 other states next door to them. They have generated some revenue. Whether that's going to offset the cost of what it's costing them to try to regulate it, I don't know. You know, I don't know if it's a door that Minnesota really wants to go down. We'll see.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dodie Bergen. First of all, I don't know whether I have a question or just some comments. I've been straight for almost 25 years, and I thank God every day because it's just been a major blessing in my life. I want to say thank you to you two especially for sharing your story, because those stories are so needed for our youth, our older people, I mean any age, and especially our youth, and going into the schools and talking to them. And I've shared my story with a lot of youth and a lot of other people. And, You know, my drug of choice, marijuana, to me, I am actually disgusted and appalled that any state would legalize marijuana or any other mood-altering chemical. It's just, it's not right. I mean, I can't really speak totally on marijuana for medical reasons. I think it's okay if you need it to help a child or to help anybody, actually, not just a child, an elderly, and they have some issue and that, you know, helps them medically. But I know I smoked it and then it led me to harder drugs, like this lady here had said. I was doing acid at the age of 15 and 16. I was doing LSD, blotter acid, pink microdot, I mean, you name it. I don't know how I even lived through it. But one thing leads to another, and you want more, and you want more, and you want more, and eventually I was addicted to cocaine. And so for the states to allow that, it's beyond me. Life has so changed, and I don't like it at all. The other thing on marijuana is I know what effects it has on your brain. I've done a lot of studies. I have a nephew who started smoking when he was, I don't even remember, 9, 10 years old. His older brother got him hooked on it. And he stole a car, he has a felony now, and he's been in and out of jail 4 or 5 times. He's now, though, the last 8, 9 months has gotten better, and he smoked a lot of pot. And it has done damage to him.
Thank you so much for your comments. I really want to recognize that, and we appreciate your comments so much.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting carried away, but anyway.
That's okay. We appreciate your comments, and congratulations on your sobriety.
Thank you.
We do have a short amount of time, and the speakers have really, graciously donated their time to come here, and so if we could keep it to only questions for the speaker comments, that would be terrific for these next couple minutes before we end. So, any questions? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adam Martins. I work for Wright County Health and Human Services, and I have a question for Miranda and Corey specifically. I heard you talk about going through numerous treatment programs, inpatient probably, some school programs would be my assumption, group homes and whatnot. What is different about Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge that you guys have found that has made it so you guys can experience success compared to some of the other ones?
Well, for me, it's a 12 to 15 month long program. Who gets over a 10-year addiction in 28 days? I went to Hazelden twice, a couple other 30-day treatments, and those are just, I mean, some of the drugs aren't even out of your system in 30 days. So for me, it gives you time to really, and I mean, they give you things to work on while you're in there. It's getting down to the root cause of why you are the way you are. It's not just, like for Hazelden and all those other treatment centers that I was at, it wasn't working on me. It was kind of just giving me the facts about what drugs can do to you and kind of just how to say no. That never really helped. I needed to figure out why I was the way I was and why I was hurting so bad. So for me, that's why Teen Challenges has helped me tremendously.
My name is Gary, and I'm a grateful recovering addict. I have a couple things. I'm a very active member of Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm actually the PR chair for the area, the RIF area, which runs from 494 all the way out to Hutchinson and down to Glencoe and back. Over the last couple of years, we've had a couple of PR events where we've sent out over 150 invitations and only had 25 people respond. And we've sent them to hospitals, to doctors, to the judges, to the detectives, to drug courts, to the police officers, to clergy, and all that stuff. And why isn't there a response to that? Why did the people not come to find out more about, and I heard nothing mentioned about fellowships or support groups like Narcotics Anonymous, which is a proven program of recovery for the addicts. You can answer that one, and then I have another question also.
Well, in the forums that we do, we have a lot of times the resource tables, we have Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous represented, and so we do reach out to them from times. I'm not sure how that went with here in Wright County, and so and with the short amount of time and the focus on kind of the prescription pills and things along those lines, we don't have a lot of time to talk about like the other support groups and things like that. But you bring up a great point. I was involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was a great program for me for a period of time, and so there are a lot of really good resources out there. We try to get those here, and so we apologize that we didn't get that here in Wright County tonight.
Right, and then also, I'm also a certified recovery coach and the MRC Minnesota Recovery Connection, and where we're going with legislation on, I believe there's some sort of an EpiPen that ambulances and hospitals have that can reverse a heroin overdose. And we're looking at trying to get that legalized so you can be over the counter. And, you know, even though my son's doing heroin, I can go, you know, I love you, and if something happens, I want you to have this. Because an addict will never stop unless they want to stop. That's a proven fact. And also with that legislation is also where you can go ahead and make a phone call to 911 and not be charged with a crime if your friend is overdosing on the couch next to you. And because I've heard people share on this where, you know, they drove the girl down to the store and left her in her car and she died because they're too afraid to make a phone call and ask for help because of what will happen. They clean up the house and they hide everything, and an hour later then they call the cops and the kid's already dead. I don't know if any of you guys support that. I would wonder what anyone up there thinks about that.
You're referring to Steve's Law, and that took effect in Minnesota July 1st, 2014. And everybody at this table supports it wholeheartedly. Too much, exactly what you said, would take place. People would OD, they're partying together. The person's turning every shade of blue you can imagine. They don't want to call the cops because they're on probation. They're going to get in trouble. Are they going to get in trouble? What's going to happen? And so I couldn't agree with you more, nor could everybody at this table agree with you more. And so that's a great law. And that is, we're encouraging people to call 911 because you can't save them if they're dead. And so at least you can give them a fighting chance, and that's what that law does. And so it's good.
Beautiful. And I did bring some meeting lists for Narcotics Anonymous for this area. And if anyone ever wants information, you can always go to naminnesota.org. The Minnesota region of Narcotics Anonymous is a leader in the world we just got some guys working there that are just so smart, their computer skills, and we are looked up to by people. I've been to a couple of world conventions, and from all around the world and all around the country, that Minnesota's region of Narcotics Anonymous does some really great things. So if anyone ever needs anything, you know, naminnesota.org. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next question.
Hi. Is it on? Oh, yeah. I was wondering, I had a friend that was jumping doctor to doctor getting pain medication. And I was wondering if there's some kind of hotline or some kind of reporting of maybe letting somebody know that he's doing this or anything like that.
Yes, doctors are supposed to report on a system, and one thing they are working a lot towards is creating better communication from doctor to doctor, also pharmacy to pharmacy, really creating a system so someone can't take the same prescription, go to one pharmacy, half hour later go down the street to another one and use it. So also there, here in Minnesota, Walgreens, they've created a list of doctors that they won't fill prescriptions for. And so they're working on, we just gave a presentation to a bunch of college students that are going to become dentists. We're really creating opportunities for education. Unfortunately, our presentation to them, they created on their own during the lunch hour, and they bring in people to talk about topics that they don't get educated on in their normal curriculum. And so we really need to change that process, and we're working to do that.
Hi, my name is Pete Sargent, and I'm going to try real hard not to embarrass my wife. My question is, how can we speed up the process for assessment in the Wright County offices for these assessments for both insurance and also to get them into the treatment houses? Maybe I should preface it that a little bit. I'm an advocate for people that are on drugs and alcohol, and they need to get into a facility quickly. They're not in trouble as far as having to go to the hospital or in dire need for medical help, but they've decided that they're going to turn their lives around, and I'm either blessed or cursed with these people coming to me. I'm a non-professional, and I feel that it's my job as an individual to get them into a facility as soon as humanly possible. Several times in the last 3 months or 4 months, I've had to take these people up to St. Cloud to a facility. In this case, it was a privately owned facility that would keep these people and work with them on the 12-step AA program until we could get the paperwork to clear through Wright County and the office that does the assessments.
I can't speak exactly to Wright County. We do have Wright County Social Services are here. They have a booth, and so I would recommend swinging by and talking to them. I know that one thing that they are starting to do at treatment programs in certain counties are able to do in-house assessments. So I think what you're talking about is Rule 25 assessments to be able to get county funding for treatment like GRH or things like that. And so what they are starting to do is really trying to expedite the process because they can really get backlogged, and that is an issue that we've seen. I don't know specifically about the situations in Wright County. I'm not sure if anyone on the panel can speak to that. But we do have Wright County Social Services. I think they could probably speak to that.
They can give the best answer.
I'm talking about before assessing them for insurance and county assistance. I'm talking about the assessment that it takes in order for these people to get into facilities like Hazelden and in Waverly. And they have to make this assessment first before we can even do the Rule of 25 and the Rule of 25A paperwork.
So there's a different assessment is what you're saying, because the Rule 25, that is the assessment that kind of
Rule
determines.
25 talks about insurance. Before that, they have to deem that the person really does have an alcohol or a drug problem. And that's what's taking time, up to 2 days. And quite frankly, I'm not a professional, so this is where my wife's going to get mad at me, but I have to push for them because they can't push for themselves. I'm an advocate. So that's where the problem is. That's the problem I've been having for quite some time. And I would like to resolve it, and I'm asking for help on behalf of these people that can't defend for themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mary, and I want to thank Miranda and Corey, and especially Nancy for sharing your story. I'm a parent. I have 2 teenage daughters. And my question stems from something that Janet said. She said something about toilet paper rolls and masking the scent, and I'm just wondering how that works and what other just basic household things should I be looking for to make sure I trust my kids and their friends come to my house so that I can keep an eye on them. But I guess I'm naive and just don't know what to look for.
Well, I know what that is. It's you take the toilet paper roll and you're stuffing it with dryer sheets. So when you're smoking and you're exhaling, you're blowing through the dryer sheets and it makes it smell good on the other side. So that's what that is.
There is this product called Smoke Buddies, and it's really easily accessible in tobacco shops. I don't think you have to be 18 to buy them, and it's probably the size, and it works just like a toilet paper roll thing that you blow out the smoke into, except, there's no smoke coming out of these ones. And, because, I tried the paper towel roll method myself, and I wasn't saying that was working, and then I heard about these Smoke Buddy things, and that was completely eliminating the smoke. So there's things like that, too.
There's also a sheet in your folders that's got a lot of warning signs, things to look for. I'm not sure if one of the police officers or one of the detectives with the sheriff wants to talk about things they see as far as, like, you heard about spoons, different, little individually wrapped candies can sometimes, or things that look like candies can have, acid or LSD on them.
Yeah, just touch on some of that stuff. Like I said, spoons in your child's room, look for the undersides if it's charred or burnt marks from a lighter. Things that you could fashion to a pipe for smoking marijuana. Remember, a lot of these drugs, heroin, methamphetamine, typically they're smoked. You can snort them, you can inject them. Small pens with the insides taken outwards, just a hollow tube. Those are we call those toot straws, used for inhaling the drugs or snorting them, or straws that are just cut in shorter lengths. Those are typically things that we see as far as household items that are converted into like a drug tool. We used to find light bulbs fashioned into meth pipes. We don't really find those as much anymore, with a lot of more head shops around where you can buy pipes made specifically for smoking that type of drug. Those are commonly used items.
Thank you. Well, we have time for one more question.
I have 2 teenage boys, and they can go out at any time and buy whatever they want in the parking lot of schools. What are we going to do to slow this down?
First of all, there's SROs at a lot of the schools. When we used to speak at the schools and talk about what to look for to both the parents and some of the teachers and kids, again, it goes back to the kids. The first day of school, we tell the kids, you guys have to take ownership of the school and work with law enforcement and the teachers to make this a good place. So some of that comes from the kids too, but anytime that we see a suspicious activity, at least in Annandale, and I can probably speak for the other chiefs, we're on it. It's the resources that it takes to work some of the larger parking lots. So again, it's you guys reporting what you may be hearing, or some of the other kids communicating with the SROs. The other thing I was going to tell you, one of the speakers talked about, paying attention to things that aren't right. And I remember several search warrants that we would serve in the city or with the task force, where we go into these houses and it'd be a beautiful home, and we get to the kids' doors, their bedroom doors, and there's a hasp with a padlock on it. And I turn and look at the parent and I say, whose room is this? Well, that's my son or daughter's. And I said, you guys allow them to lock their doors? And then we take a bolt cutter, break into that room, and here you have paraphernalia laying all over. You've got bounce sheets in the vents for the heaters and things like that. And the parents we sit there and explain everything. And the parents were just in awe and said, I would have never guessed my kid would have done this. So again, if something's not right, reach out to someone and ask, or just question your son or daughter and just say, hey, what is all this stuff? So I've seen it several times.
The other chiefs have anything to add to that? Or
I would just add to what Jeff is saying. One of the statistics that I saw during one of the presentations was that kids will not do something because they're more afraid of law enforcement than they are of displeasing their parents. And that's not flattering to me, because that should be in reverse. So I thank you all for coming, but I'm going to put the question of what do we do in the parking lots, I'm going to put that right back on you and the 12th man philosophy. That's where we need to fix it. We can put more cops in parking lots. We can put more cops in a lot of places. The school resource officers, like Jeff said, they do a great job. But you have to talk to your kids, and you have to listen, and you have to talk to them again, and you have to listen. And that's, I think, the best way, the most effective way to turn that back around.
We greatly appreciate everyone coming out tonight, and wow, hearing all the stories, it was just something that meant a lot to all of us. We have resource tables out there, and I also would like to recognize Lieutenant Sean Derringer for having the vision and making the contacts and pulling all this together. So we really need to give him a hand too tonight. Thanks.